On Thursday, award-winning independent journalist Amy Goodman announced she's going to turn herself into authorities in North Dakota over an outstanding warrant. The charge, doing her job.
The state of North Dakota has issued an arrest warrant for me that didn't happen when I was there, when the Democracy Now! Team on September 3rd was covering what's taking place in North Dakota, which is really historic. You have the largest unification of Native American tribes from Latin America, the United States, and Canada, who are struggling right now for nothing less than the fate of the planet.
On September 3rd, Goodman and a Democracy Now! Team released this report.
We're standing at the construction site of the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Protesters advance as far as a small wooden bridge. Security unleashes one of the dogs, which attacks two of the Native Americans' horses.
It was Labor Day weekend, Saturday. They were going to plant their tribal flags at the site of the tribal burial grounds. And what they saw there were bulldozers in full gear, desecrating their what they considered their sacred sites.
Showing security for the Dakota Access Pipeline, physically assaulting nonviolent, mostly Native American land and water protectors, pepper spraying them, unleashing attack dogs, one of which is shown with blood dripping from its nose and mouth.
And she's still standing here threatening you.
Why are you letting her dog go after the protesters? It's covered in blood.
We were filming one dog whose mouth and nose were dripping with blood. The dogs bit a number of the people on the ground. And it was terrifying. As Winona LaDuke, the indigenous leader from White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota, said, to the governor of North Dakota, Jack Dalrymple, you are not George Wallace. This is not Alabama. This is not 1963. Sicking dogs on protesters.
It wasn't until 5 days later, Goodman was charged with one count of criminal trespass, and a warrant was issued for her arrest. She could face up to 30 days in jail if convicted. The gripping report produced by Goodman and her team was picked up by mainstream media outlets and viewed by millions.
We released that video that night, and it went viral immediately, 14 million views, and it's way beyond that. And the networks all took it. I call it trickle-up journalism. NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, NPR.
Goodman's story was crucial evidence that countered the police statements, which was repeated verbatim in many media outlets, that the protesters were violent or they attacked the security forces.
The editor of the Bismarck Tribune apologized for their coverage the next day when they just brought out the views of the sheriff, who wasn't even there, and the security guards. We were there on the ground. I talked to the security guards and the protesters alike. The security guards didn't want to talk very much, but they said a few things. And we captured the entire scene on the ground.
Corporate media has largely ignored or downplayed the coalescing movement against the Dakota Access Pipeline. But as the Real News and other independent media has reported, the fight against the pipeline has already spawned the largest convergence of Native American tribes in recent memory.
Exactly. The reason they took our footage, and, we welcome them, steal the story, please, is because they weren't there. And so they showed all over the world, this video got shown. We left the next day, but 5 days later, on the eve of a major court decision, the North Dakota governor, Dalrymple, called out the National Guard. And on that same day, the state of North Dakota issued an arrest warrant for me. I think it's very clear what's taking place, and that is that the authorities in the state of North Dakota don't want us shining our cameras where it matters, for people to be able to speak for themselves, to describe their own experience. Democracy Now!, this daily grassroots global news hour, covers movements. It's our job to go to where the silence is.
McLean County State's Attorney Ladd Erickson, who was trying the case, told the Bismarck Tribune, quote, "She's a protester, basically. Everything she reported on was from the position of justifying the protest actions."
The important issue is that the prosecutor is raising the content of our coverage. That is why we have a First Amendment. It's the separation of the state from journalism. We are not supposed to have state journalism here. There's a reason why our profession is the only one explicitly protected in the U.S. Constitution, because we're supposed to be the check and balance on power. If the state doesn't like what we are reporting, that is not an arrestable offense. And if it is, our democracy is in big trouble.
The protests are not letting up. 27 were arrested on Tuesday. This week, another media professional, award-winning filmmaker Dea Scholzberg, was charged with 3 felony counts for covering a protest. She could face up to 45 years in jail.
These are historic frontline struggles. It's our job to be there. It's our job to cover them. The state might not want us to shine the spotlight here, but that is what we are supposed to be doing. The First Amendment is not only about the press and freedom of the press. It is important because it's about the public's right to know. In order to have a meaningful democracy, people have to know what is happening so they can make up their own informed minds. That's why it's so important that we're on the front lines covering what's happening. People are putting their bodies on the line. Quite literally, people are putting their bodies on the pipeline. It's a historic struggle by all accounts, and it's our job to be there. They shouldn't be arresting journalism.
Hundreds have been arrested protesting the $3.8 billion pipeline that would span 5 states if completed. It's being backed by wealthy financial interests, and Donald Trump has personal investments in the pipeline. He nor Hillary Clinton have publicly commented on its construction.
Well, Jess, so look at the period of time we're in. At a time of a presidential election that is absolutely critical. The debates hardly raising the issue of climate change. The vice presidential debate in the midst of Hurricane Matthew, as 1,000 people were dying in Haiti. At least 39 people have died in southeastern United States and North Carolina. A number of them died of drowning, and the rivers are rising. This is an absolutely critical time to take on this issue. And if the elected leaders are not doing it, the people who are doing it are on the ground. It's our job not just to put a microphone to those in power, cover these debates where they're not asked about climate change. We're talking about the fate of the planet. Democracy Now! Goes to every UN climate summit. We were there in Copenhagen and Cancun. We were there in Durban and Doha. We were there in Peru and Poland and Paris this past year. Marrakesh is the next one up in Morocco. Climate change is a critical issue of the day. It's the media's responsibility to question these politicians about this. And if they're not going to do it, it's our job to get out there and cover the people who are. And the people who are on the ground right now in North Dakota, and it's our job to be there.
Goodman has a long history of cutting-edge journalism and putting her own body on the line to expose human rights abuses. Her work has earned dozens of awards, including the 2008 Right Livelihood Award, considered the alternative Nobel. Goodman is set to turn herself in on Monday. For The Real News, this is Jessel Noor.